All right, so let's start here. There has been widespread condemnation of travel bans imposed by Western countries on southern African nations. The SA Airline Association says it's a hasty, knee-jerk reaction to the new Omicron variant, which was detected first in Botswana, then in South Africa, Hong Kong and Belgium. In KwaZulu-Natal, the annual Belito Rage Festival event is set to start tomorrow, despite a sharp increase in COVID-19 cases here in Gauteng. Our reporter Heidi Giokos, Nqobile, Madlala and Lethiwe Mdluli have been on the ground today. Let's bring them in for updates. Heidi, let's start with you. What have you been looking at today? I understand it's around what's been happening at the airlines. Are passengers still stranded?
Yes, certainly, Sally. I think the picture still shows how there's a lot of panic with many trying to get out of the country, but also many still trying to get into the country. And this is all because of the travel bans that have been imposed by various countries. We know the biggest one that has caused a lot of panic is the fact that the UK is not allowing any South African into the UK, which is causing pandemonium. We do know that, of course, the UK government coming out and saying that only those that have citizenship or are nationals of the UK or Ireland are able to get into the country, or are residents of Ireland or the UK, which makes it very complicated for them. People are stranded, people are stuck, they don't know how to get through to the various countries. Also, given the fact, Sally, that the UAE, which many transit through Dubai and Emirates, the airline, that has also banned South Africans. Qatar as well, many people would transit through there. So people are blocked. We saw very long queues at Kenyan Airways and Ethiopia Airways, and that speaks to how those two airlines are still allowing passengers to go through and transit through, but there's still quarantine that needs to happen in various countries. So that becomes a big problem. We know Rwanda Air also has put a travel ban as well as Mauritius. So it's almost as though everybody has red flagged or red listed South Africa. We got a chance to speak to two travellers. Let's listen to what they had to say.
Since here we do our COVID test, it's 850 Rand. If you land in Ghana, it's additional 150 US for a rapid test when you arrive. But when you depart Ghana, it's 30 US. So I can't figure out the cost. So it does get very expensive. My last trip in West Africa was about 4,500 Rand in COVID test.
We were supposed to leave from South Africa to Sri Lanka on the 11th of December. But because everything that's been going on, we tried to change our tickets. It was actually on Qatar Airways for this morning. But then, as of Friday, Qatar essentially canceled all their flights. Then we scrambled and we thought we got flights out from here to Mauritius. On the last flight that was out yesterday in the morning. But then when we got here to the airport, that flight was cancelled as well because the Mauritian government decided overnight to cancel that flight. That was the last SAA flight out.
I mean, it really is a mess, isn't it, Heidi? FlySafair was about to start flying out to Mauritius. That, of course, has all had to be cancelled because Mauritius has banned us too.
Certainly, and it's not just FlySafair, but it's also our national carrier, SAA, that cannot fly out to Mauritius. And they had just started getting back some of those passengers that they lost while the airline was in business rescue. And now they've had to cancel that because of this travel ban. But FlySafair started or was planning to move into the international market and provide this flight to South Africans who wanted to travel to Mauritius as of the 11th of December. But that cannot happen anymore because of this travel ban. Of course, it's important to highlight the fact that airlines take instruction from the various governments, and you have passengers often fighting with these airlines to say, we are stuck, we are stranded, what do we do next? But airlines take instructions from the government, and when there's a travel ban and certain regulations, these airlines need to impose that immediately. But we spoke to FlySafair, and this is what they had to say.
There's this concept that we've been hearing quite a lot of revenge travel and this sort of pent-up demand and those kinds of notions. And absolutely, our first couple of flights to and from Mauritius were completely sold out. So we do have, unfortunately, a number of disappointed customers in that regard. But I think the point you raise is absolutely valid. You know, the tricky thing is when you're in the midst of a current operation and an ongoing operation, you have that challenge of doing the repatriation flights to bring people home. And I guess that's the one blessing that we had, having not started yet, is to not be in that particular situation.
And Heidi, we're also hearing that Rwanda has banned South Africa. So, of course, it's not just Western countries that are banning us, but also some of our African colleagues. The Department of International Relations, I know that you've also spoken to them. They're being inundated with South Africans stuck in various parts of the world. Tell us more.
Yes, Sally, and it was quite interesting today hearing from the Department of International Relations saying that it's almost unacceptable, and if one could use the word heartbreaking, to see how other African countries are now starting to ban South Africa as well, when we were seeing this trend of, for example, in Europe and the UK banning South Africa, but now you're also having African countries do so. But we do know that Rwanda issued a notice very late last night saying that direct flights between Rwanda and Southern Africa are temporarily suspended. All arriving and departing passengers at Kigali International Airport must present a negative COVID-19 test, but you cannot be from South Africa. They will not allow that flight to take off. And all arriving passengers must quarantine for 24 hours at a designated hotel at their own cost. So that's another huge issue that travelers have to now go through, is that if they do get to a specific country, they might have to quarantine, some for 24 hours, some for longer, and it's normally at the cost of the passenger or the traveler, which becomes almost impossible to bear because people don't factor that cost in.
All right, thank you very much for that, Heidi. So, Nqobile and Madlala, I want to bring you in here because you've been finding out more about talk of mandatory vaccinations, which, of course, the President spoke about. He set up a task team. He really wants to push forward with this, saying that we have to get more people vaccinated. You've been speaking to students. What are they telling you?
Well, Sally, most of them are not sure if they want to get vaccinated. In fact, they were saying that they would like to talk more and have more information so that they can actually make the decision to do so. So most of them are saying that they want to sit down, they want to speak to their leaders, they want to speak to the university, and they're also scared at the same time. They're saying at this point, knowing that the virus is so dangerous and that it's targeting their group, which is between 18 and 34 at this point, they're saying that it's quite serious, and therefore they find themselves where they are closed in their residential areas. In fact, we went to TUT where already they had seen a cluster outbreak in that area, and this has become a huge problem for the students. They're saying that they want contact learning, but they need to know more about the vaccine. Not that they are against the vaccine, they just need more information. So we find ourselves where the students are divided. Others are saying that they will not be vaccinating, but others are saying that they will be vaccinating. But of course, with time, that's not going to be an option. And we do understand going forward, that's what's going to be happening. But let's listen in to some of the students that are saying that they are going to be vaccinating.
I think from the new variant which just occurred, it sounded so dangerous. And what I will say, or maybe the view of my students, is that we encourage all our students to vaccinate and also to adhere to all COVID-19 protocols. However, we might be different because some might take it in another way. But then we are saying where possible, those who might be positive enough to go for vaccine, we really encourage all our students to do so.
And Nqobile, what are authorities saying? It does seem like certain higher learning institutions are moving more and more close to sort of putting in vaccine mandates in some areas.
Well, quite simply put, Sally, they're saying that there will be a time where they will basically say it'll be mandatory. We do understand that Wits University is one of those universities that have come forward saying that they want it to be mandatory. I mean, there's no other way that you can beat this Omicron, this virus. They're saying that the only way is for students to vaccinate because they understand that students and younger people are the carrier of this virus, and the only way to fight it is to get immunity immunization at this point, and so they're saying that going forward, they want the students to think about the fact that this will be mandatory, and therefore there will be no questions about it going forward. But they are willing to talk, and they are willing to give more information to these students, and they are willing to communicate. But that window period might just be shorter with time. Let's listen into the professor, who says that going forward, this of course will be mandatory.
We have 1/3 of our students which have either been vaccinated so far or in the vaccination program, which means they've already got the first dose and they are waiting for the next dose. And that's from our data perspective. We have then something called the middle 1/3. The middle 1/3 are those students that we have checked from our ground data perspective who wants to get vaccinated. And while they want to get vaccinated, they have still a lot of questions to ask. They're still making their time. And what we are doing is we are engaging with them. And then when you went to TUT, similarly, you go to UP, you will go to our TVET colleges, deep down in Bizana, deep down in Guguletu, in our community colleges, you will see that these engagements are happening for the middle 1/3. Now, the middle 1/3 population that I'm talking about wants to get vaccinated but have questions like, will my testicles become enlarged?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad indictment that all this fake news has taken hold, especially among young students who are meant to be the cream of the crop and really looking at data, looking at the science, and not being hoodwinked easily by fake news. But those fears are there, and I think it is a massive health challenge. And Nqobile, particularly fascinating that you bring us those concerns for students at TUT, where we know there's been a cluster outbreak. Really interesting insights. Thank you. Let's move now to Durban, and I'm going to bring in our reporter, Lethiwe Mdluli. And now, Lethiwe, this issue of the Rage Festival, we know that last year Rage caused a super spreader event, but we also know that this year the organisers of Rage are saying you have to have not only a vaccine, but I think they're also now saying a PCR test. However, we also know that the president last night discouraged these events. He hasn't put a halt to them as yet. Have you managed to find out from the organisers if they are going ahead tomorrow?
Well, Sally, so far I actually had a conversation with one of the organisers about that event, whether they're still going ahead or not. And so far it looks like they will be going ahead. It's set to start tomorrow until Sunday. And we were visiting the venue this morning in Palito, and there was a huge marquee that has been erected in that place. And it looks like preparations are in place in spite of those calls from various organisations and also the president to basically stop the events and not allow for those events to happen. But I actually spoke to the Department of Education here in the province because I wanted to find out from them what are their thoughts, because we are expecting matriculants from across the country to come and be at this festival. And what they're saying is that unfortunately it's out of their hands, but they are calling on pupils to not attend the events because of the rising in number of infections in the country and of course the new variant. They are cautioning those pupils to not attend, but of course, as I've said before, the venue, it looks like they're getting prepared for it to kickstart tomorrow. I also sadly spoke to a lot of residents of Palito because last year during this time that area experienced a high number of infections following the Palito Rage Festival. So today I was speaking to them, trying to find out what their thoughts are and what are they thinking about this festival, because it is going to affect them as residents. And I got some mixed reviews about it. Some are saying that children should be allowed to go and party and celebrate ending matric, but others are saying that they do not think it's a good thing that this festival is going ahead, especially, of course, with the high number of infections in the country. While speaking to those residents, these were their views.
I believe that they need to put more restrictions in place, allow the kids to have perhaps a party, but at the same time limit the amount of people, limit the crowds, make sure they're wearing the mask, and make sure that they're all vaccinated. I mean, it's difficult because I understand they're still young, so I personally feel like kids need to somehow get back to some form of normalcy, but at the same time, I understand, with the elderly, hopefully with more vaccinations, less problems.
People have been dying since last year, and it's a super spreader of COVID-19, so I think we should just chill, stay at home, relax, just so we save ourselves, Yeah, we don't need it. Yeah, maybe we can have fun with our families indoors. There's so many ways of having fun instead of just gathering together, like at the expense of our lives, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's a bad idea. Honestly, I think it's a bad idea.
So many competing interests, such a difficult situation to get right. Lethiwe and Mdluli, that report on the Rage Festival, which looks like it is going to go ahead from tomorrow in Ballito, and Nqobile and Madlala focusing on the students, particularly the students of TUT, where that outbreak happened. And of course, Heidi Giokos looking at the travel bans. Thank you very much for your reporting. So, Shahan, it's such an interesting situation because you can see that these kids have worked really hard, they need a break, and we keep being told life must go on. But at the same time, we know that these events, even if you're vaccinated, we've seen it overseas, big sporting events where everyone is apparently vaccinated, but it has led to more infections. Yeah. And while the numbers haven't ticked up hugely in KwaZulu-Natal, these are youngsters who are going to go home all across the country. Maybe they should look at sort of staying in their bedrooms for a full week and doing a PCR test before their mum and dad let them out.
Yeah, before they go to their grandparents, because the vulnerable is actually the key thing here with these festivals. Well, we'll see.